Hello, welcome to the Economic Times Insight session of the ET India Leadership Council Initiative. I am Bhanu Prakash. I'm a partner in Thornton, Bharat, and I lead the life sciences and healthcare sector. In this session today, we'll deliberate on the role of nutraceuticals in the growth of pharma and life sciences healthcare sector. I think just to start, malnutrition is a historical challenge for India. I think with the recent COVID pandemic, it highlighted two important aspects: the importance of healthy living and preventive care. And nutraceuticals has a important role in addressing both issues. I think it's not surprising that 60% of the doctor's prescription in India today have supplements. I think just to give some background of the sector, it's globally it's a $400 billion market, expected to reach $650 billion by 2030. US, Japan, and Europe account for the major share of the market. India accounts for 2%, but it is expected to grow at a healthy rate and reach around $18 billion by 2025. Of course, I think the growth of the per capita income, education, the emphasis on healthy living is driving the growth in this segment. I've given us some broad context. I think it's important to bring in the industry perspective. So I have Mr. Aniruddha Rajurkar with me on the recording. Thank you, Mr. Aniruddha Rajurkar, joining this. Mr. Aniruddha Rajurkar is the CEO of Shield Healthcare. Shield Healthcare is a private equity-owned healthcare platform with focused on women health. Mr. Aniruddha has 2 decades of experience in the pharma sector and has held leadership positions in DRL, Zydus Cadila, and Ranbaxy. He has been actively involved in advocating on policy initiatives for the sector in various forums such as FICCI and IPA. Welcome, Aniruddha.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhanu.
Thank you. I'll probably start with a few broader questions, then I want to come into a little more specifics. I think today the average life of a human being has significantly increased, but the bigger question is, has the individual spending that life healthy, or the later part of the year goes in a disease-riddled life? I think so. What can we do to make it healthy? Like to get your insights on how nutrients can help in leading a healthy life.
Thanks. Thanks, Bhanu, and thanks for ET Insights for having me on this call. I think, Bhanu, as you said, the average lifespan has definitely increased. At the time of independence, it was below 40 years. Now it is in excess of 60 years and expected to go closer to 70 years. Now that's a huge change. But I think the span of life and the quality of life are two different parameters. It is important to have a longer life, but it is also extremely relevant to have a healthier life. And the health and the care of the elongated health span is key to productive life, and that happens when you have lesser disease burden. Unfortunately, as we know, India has, by virtue of population, India has the largest disease burden of most diseases, but in certain lifestyle oriented diseases, India has the significant disease burden. And if we have to manage such large populations with significant disease burdens, I don't think only medical, only pharmaceutical ingredients, only medicine, only tertiary care, healthcare setups would help us to navigate this challenge. And I'm sure government is also aware of that. So the later stage diseases of non-communicable diseases have been on the radar of the government for improvement. So if you have to fight this battle, nutraceuticals and nutrient status of an individual becomes extremely important, because it can not only lead to a healthier lifespan, but also helps in managing the disease, pre-existing disease better. Just for an example, the typical diseases of the old age are what? Hypertension and diabetes. We are the diabetes capital, we are close to being hypertensive capital, and so on and so forth. So if that's the case, I think you said 60% of doctor prescriptions have nutraceuticals. What's the best thing to reduce the diabetes burden? The best thing to reduce the progression of the disease and management of diabetes in a healthier way is managing your nutrition well. Why managing your nutrition? If there are any deficiencies of key ingredient, the nutraceutical supplements do manage the disease well. And we know by experience, by study, by clinical evidence, we know various ingredients. Vitamin E has established role in hypertension management. Vitamin D has established role in various osteoporosis situations. Calcium supplementations for women in menopause. I can go on and on and on. But principally, as the age grows up, I think the nutrition deficiency and lifestyle both become critical. So if we have to manage the growing population and the disease burden of growing population, I think the role of nutrition and support of nutraceutical is the key for managing at the scale at which we face these challenges.
Thanks, Aniruddha. I think that's pretty insightful. I think you are focused on women health, so I thought, okay, let me pick something around that. Today, I think 73% of the Indians are deficient in proteins. And if you really look at that, so there is a greater emphasis on mother and child nutrition. My mother and child nutrition deficiency is a big challenge in India, right? Government and private sector has led many initiatives. Be it Thornton has partnered with many large private sector players to utilize their CSR funds in addressing this issue, helping in upgrading the Anganwadis. But of course, there's a lot more to be done. So from your experience, what do you believe are the key challenges for mother and child nutrition deficiency, and how pharmaceutical sector or the nutraceutical sector can address this challenge?
I think you have picked up a very important challenge. I think infant mortality gets tracked at WHO level, death during pregnancy and delivery gets tracked at WHO level, and those two indices have been driving the government programs for quite long now. The initiatives like Janani, like pregnancy kits at the time of delivery being handed over in certain states, including one which I stay in, has been the attempt at government. We have seen improvements, but if one has to see serious matching of the indices at the WHO expected level, I think what is relevant for healthcare and pharma is to create sufficient evidence for usage of nutraceuticals. Nutrition is key in those early age, and nutrition is key when it comes to mother, because those first 6 months, WHO also recommends the baby has to be completely dependent on mother. So nutrition status of the mother and child becomes extremely critical in early years. What do we know currently is typically protein deficiency and iron deficiency, which through government programs also various supplements are given. Where do we see the gap, and where can pharma companies do come in my opinion, is at twofold. First, compliance of the babies and mothers is always a challenge. And if there is any sector which knows the technology and has the knowledge of these conditions, it's the pharma industry. They know, as a pharma industry person, we know what is the deficiency, we know what will solve that challenge. What we possibly need to do is to figure out how can we help solve that challenge, whereby we can improve the compliance. There are attempts. This is a technology and development area. There are attempts on development of various formulations. You would find gummies on the market now. You will find biscuits of protein on the market now. Those are, I think, towards the private channel. But some import of those things in a government setup will definitely improve the compliance. And second, I do believe is the use of technology. If mobile phone is available with the mother, which is mostly the case, how can we improve the adherence? And this is well understood by the industry when it comes to disease management at a longer duration. So pharma industry can definitely play a role in improving the patient adherence, improving the technology of the delivery, rather than giving an iron tablet, which is very difficult and very sticky to consume, you can offer something which is more easier for the baby and also for the mother. I mean, this is a typical role which the domain knowledge which the industry has can offer upfront to the government, and obviously industry has, as you said, a lot of initiatives on their own. Many companies who are present in women's health, in gynecology, are driving the initiatives of their own. Associations of doctors do continue to drive initiatives of their own. So these can be collaborative approaches from the public and the private side to ensure that these indices really change and mother's health and child health improves in the country.
You sort of emphasize that nutraceuticals can address this issue. I think so. There is an opportunity in the market. So I'll come to a little more on the business side. Nutraceuticals saw significant growth during COVID. Just curious to understand, do you believe that growth has sustained? And what is your view on growth opportunities in this segment, and how you will see a growth in the near term and the long term?
Well, I would say the pandemic and the couple of years of COVID have certainly made each one of us aware about the requirement to be healthy and to be nutritionally sufficient. I doubt anybody would not have consumed immune supplements or vitamin supplements of any nature during those 2 years.
Yes, yeah.
So, when 140 crore people consume something, obviously the growth is phenomenal. And naturally, it cannot stay at that level. So, post COVID, we have seen a dip in consumption, but even if it comes down, it will settle at a higher base. So, in terms of the supplements, which the nutritional supplements which all of us have gone through, two things have happened. One is awareness, and second is acceptance. Acceptance was very high during COVID period, and that triggered the action of consumption. But what is residual awareness post COVID is still very, very high.
Correct.
And that should be now used to create acceptable delivery mechanisms so that the end outcome is important. You touched upon the growth for the future, having seen a peak and came down. What's the possibility of growth? I think at three levels, at a pharma industry level, at a doctor level, and at a healthcare provider level, we have these opportunities. What do nutraceuticals solve at a pharma industry level? They solve the mostly drying up new product pipeline. They give option for the industry to really add meaningful products to their portfolio and drive the growth. For the doctor, obviously, it is a supportive therapy. It is a adjuvant therapy for very many conditions where he can manage the patient well. And for healthcare providers, it improves the outcome. For a hospital, for any setup which is part of the healthcare, it definitely improves the patient outcomes. So with these three inbuilt advantages into the nutraceutical domain, I think growth will continue to be driven. You have to focus on these three key stakeholders, solve what are their needs in various therapy areas, and then can build the growth as times go by. Because this increased awareness will definitely fuel the next level of growth.
I agree with you. I think today the dietary supplements are accounting for 17% growth. So I think, it sort of augurs well with what you mentioned. Do you see export market as an opportunity to grow? What's your take on that?
I think right at the start you mentioned India is one of the least with the highest population. So huge domestic market is the first answer. But I would say the template, if you create something in India, is very much possible to replicate. The regulated markets of US and Europe may be slightly different, but the LATAM, the MENA countries, Middle East, North African countries, where this India template, the successful India template, can be replicated when it comes to nutritionals, nutraceuticals. So on an export level, I think driven by the success in India should be the way forward for capturing the rest of the world markets. When it comes to regulated and very developed US, Japan, Europe kind of situations, I think the template is slightly different, where you have to compete with current set of incumbents. But in many other markets, China is obviously at a completely different ballgame when it comes to either pharma or nutra both. So I would say LATAM and MENA would be receivers of Indian template of success.
Sounds good. So what I'm hearing is build on the domestic market, address the emerging markets, then move towards the developed markets and the regulated markets. Nutraceutical manufacturers, obviously in this growth journey, will look at various modes of expansion. So, just curious to understand, are there any expectations from the manufacturers, from various stakeholders such as government or the regulators or anybody else in this space? Yeah.
Okay. The current lay of the land is slightly dispersed in terms of there is pharma industry playing in as a provider of nutraceuticals. There are these ingredient players which bring in the API equivalent, and there are these developmental setups which help to bridge the two. And many companies do this, many pharma companies do this in-house as well. So the need for each of this is different. I would say the ingredient sector would definitely look for an incentive in terms of manufacturing. PLI is in vogue in many sectors. A PLI in this will definitely help bring a lot of nutra manufacturing inside the country. But at the level of development and go to market, which is done very well by pharma and in some cases by the consumer companies, I would only say the clarity on the regulations. FSSAI is trying to build a framework around which regulations are getting up, but still it is restrictive in terms of the list and the ingredients it can offer. This is a huge sector. I mean, this is an equivalent of APIs and chemical entities we see, and it is sufficiently complex than normal chemical entities which we see across. So one will have to be accommodative and open for newer and better nutraceuticals to come into the country and build solutions for the people and the diseases that exist in this place. So that kind of support on a regulatory framework, kind of support in terms of getting the manufacturing much better in this country will definitely help nutraceuticals to do better.
Thank you, Aniruddha. This is insightful. I think healthy India will be key to, as we leapfrog from $3 trillion economy to $5 trillion economy. And I'm sure all of us understand the importance of nutrition to be a healthy India. I think there are many growth opportunities for the nutraceutical sector in contributing to make India healthy, make Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.